Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Friday, January 17th. And we got uh, we had an interesting day yesterday, range bound kind of a day, but they ended up with a pretty good sell-off, especially on the Nasdaq. That was really something. They started taking that lower with a vengeance, and there was no relief at all. They started trading back up, recovered a little bit overnight. Has been doing pretty good, so that's we'll take it, right? We'll take it. Now, I was going to just touch on one thing here on Monday. This coming Monday, it's Martin Luther King Day, so I think there's going to be a half a day. So there's not going to be anything going on Monday, right? So a half a day on Monday. It's like a half a day. Close it like a pre-open at noon Central, so 1 o'clock Eastern is when the market stops, as you know. So I'm not going to open the room on Monday. But it is Friday, and thank God it's Friday, because we do need a relief, don't we? Starting off on the ES, touching on the news first here, right at the get-go, 8:30 we get housing starts and permits, industrial production at 9:15. That's about it. I don't think maybe industrial production is going to do something, but none of those I don't think is going to have major impacts on the market. Overall, though, a little sell-off. ES wasn't too bad. Nasdaq, they really leaned in on that one on the downside, but they when we did the last update, it looked pretty darn range bound, and I think it ended up range bound as well on the ES. At least they did not take it too far down. They were down here at the 5960s, but they did not kind of fall out of bed or anything like that. But it looked like someone took profit or something like that, or liquidated some stuff late yesterday. So we're still right smack in this middle of the range, right at the mode of this long-term distribution. This area of value, we're trading in the middle of it. So starting off range bound again. Excuse me, range bound again. Looking to fade the edges back to the mean. If they start challenging the 6,015 to 30 area, this upper area of resistance, looking for short setups in that area. And if they start clearing that 40 area, then we can start leaning in on the long side. And on the way down, starting at about the 5930s, all the way down to the 5900s, we have support. So we have about the 30-point support area here to pay attention to, and that's going to be the area we pay attention to the long side to get the long setup for rotations back to the mean. It is pretty good range. It's like a 100-point range. For a day session, it may take a couple of sessions to really go back and forth unless you have news driving it. So to get started, we're just going to start with 3 levels up, 3 levels down. So basically looking at selling it is 6,000s, the 6,015s, 30s up to the 40, 45s. These areas of resistance, we are trading closer to the upper area than the lower. But if they start clearing that upper area, the 6,040 to 45s, start thinking about the long side of the market at that point. I think the better resistance is right here between 15 and the 40 area. And on the way down, looking to buy weakness, 59.90, 80, 65s, 60s, 50s for rotations back up. If they head down to that 30 level, this is an interesting dynamic. So if they start if they take out the 50 area, we have this whole retracement trade to look forward to. That they're retracing all these fingerprint Z. That was the employment situation, came out Friday. Yeah, that was last Friday's employment situation, and that was a pretty darn good move to the downside. So the 14th. I'm looking at there. Look at that. No, that wasn't the employment situation. That was something else. PPI, that's what it was. It was CPI. That's what it was. I'm sitting here, damn it, this is employment. No, it's not the employment situation because that was Friday. This is just 3 days back. So Wednesday was the CPI, and that's kind of what caused this big move to the upside. But nonetheless, the 5950s, if they take out that support area, look for a potential retracement trade all the way down here to that 5030, the 20s, the 5905s. So that could be a pretty good move right here to test these lower areas of support. So Looking to buy against the support though until we get down to the 59.50. Below that, I would start leaning in on the short side and see if they can retrace these single prints to the downside. So that's what we are looking forward to on the ES, at least on the downside. So starting off range bound, given the little sell-off we had yesterday and the fact that the overnight is trying to take it higher, I'm going to start looking for early strength, see if they can retest these upper areas first. That looks like very much like what they're trying to do. And looking for short setups against, as I said, as I was going to say 6,000, but they already taken that out. So 15s, the 30s, and the 40 to 45s on the way up. So that's kind of how we get started. And I would expect more range-bound trading today. We'll see how the news comes out. But you never know when the market's going to start moving, especially, remember, on Monday we also have the inauguration and the big shift. There's going to be like big political stuff going on early next week. So the market could be reacting to that. I don't think it's a big factor in how the market reacts, but I guess it could be. Of course, you're going to see a ton of policy changes happening early next week. There's going to be a lot of cross currents early next week in the markets as to what goes on with that. So anyway, range bound trading on the ES, that's how we get started. So watch the 59.50 on the way down and the 6,040s on the way up. That's going to be the outer edges to pay attention to. Looking at NASDAQ and the bond market looks like they are kind of back in a good mood. Definitely heading higher. They're taking out this edge, the 113s now in the overnight, and they are heading higher. So they are on the way up here towards this 1325. See the high volume node right there. Let's see if they stall there or they can keep charging. So the yield's coming down, bond price is going up, traded from the long side of the market. So at this point, they're going to buy weakness against the 1415s, the 1309s, 9 to 10s, 113s. I would say below 113s, we take off that long bias and go back a range bound. So they're going to buy against these three levels of support, rotations back up, and if we get early weakness. And watch, if you take out the 113, take off that long bias, and then we're back range bound at that point. So interesting dynamic on the bond, so that's going to be very helpful. NASDAQ, that's the one which had a real doozy. I'll show you that. You can look at that sell-off, right? So we only had one probe down here, and that was in mid-session. They ran it down into the 260s, that volume edge. But it's the 260 and the 200s or 210s is where the volume edge is at. But you can see it pretty clearly here. So if that comes out, look out below. I think if we can head a lot lower. At this point, they ran it low in the mid session on yesterday on the Nasdaq, and late in the session, like at the very end, they ran it all the way down to the 170s. That was something. And then you can see how the overnight has retraced this all the way back up again, and hence looking for early strength. Let's see how far they can take it on the. Let's see how far they can take it on the long side of the market. And to see if they can retest these. The first edge being the 430s, 490s, and the 560s. They're going to look for short against those areas, but not maybe super aggressively. On the NASDAQ, we are on our way higher, but we are right. They have an attractor now at the 500s, right? We're trading towards the lower end of the range. So NASDAQ has a lot more range to go before really running into some good resistance, which is going to be up here against that 21,800s. So between the 700 and 800s, that's where we find really good resistance. NASDAQ is way down. And they've been down here testing the lower support areas when the ES was in the middle of their range. So I'm thinking the NASDAQ may have just tested a lower support area and held, and now they're heading back up again. So starting off from looking for early strengths, almost looking for starting basically on the long side of the market, I would say. This is a little bit more than early strength, I would say. And the reason I'm saying that is just because we bounced off the lower support areas and are heading higher. So the first hurdle is going to be the low volume area at 430. You can see that ledge right there pretty well. That comes out. I think we're heading up to the 500 to 510s. And above that, next attractor is going to be the 680s. So if the NASDAQ starts taking off, clear a couple of these resistance areas, we can see a nice rally in the NASDAQ. That could help the whole market. So we will see. And but I would expect some cross currents. We have inauguration coming on Mondays. It's a short trading day. You're going to get a ton of different policy changes, and it's going to be digesting these policy changes. Market's going to have definitely some a little bit of cross currents going on there. Now, if we get early weakness for some reason, I would be buying against the 350s, the 320s, 260s down to the 200s for rotations back up. I think below the 200s, maybe give it the 170s too, but these three support areas is going to be the key support area to pay attention to. So starting at the 260s, they take that out. I'm going to start worrying about the short side, 210 and the 170s. Still looking for buying opportunities, but less aggressively. So I would consider potential short trades as well when they take out the 260s for see how far they can take it. Nasdaq has been really a real doozy back and forth. So when they move. So there's short-term short setups as well, even if you're leaning towards the long side as they run out of gas. The only issue in the Nasdaq is that if you run into this little squeeze, they can squeeze that pretty far before they give up on it. So you want to wait for it to fail and give you a good setup. A retest failure type setup would be something like this, right? The stall, pull back, stall, start heading lower. That would be a good retest failure. But they sometimes they end up doing back and forth for like 3 or 4 times before they fail. So Nasdaq is a difficult one to trade, but the payout is pretty good. So starting off range bound with a bias to the upside on the Nasdaq, a little bit more so than the ES. On the ES, I'm looking for early strength, primarily since we are pretty close to the upper areas of resistance. And then finally, oil and gold. Oil starting to head lower. That is going to be, I think, the theme. So capital flow on oil, look for moves to the downside. And they are definitely, I mean, this whole move here is all about sanctions, late Biden sanctions on the oil industry and Russia and so on and so forth. So as soon as the new policies kick in, we'll see what happens. But expect a lot of volatility in oil to come early next week. So I'm going to sit tight on that one and see and watch it. There could be some good trading opportunities in here, but just to be mindful. The bias and likelihood is the market is going to come down pretty hard as they take off this crazy shit they put on the crazy stuff they put on the oil industry and Russian tankers, especially now when they're going to try to negotiate some kind of a peace agreement with Russia. So we'll see. Looking to sell strength on the oil at 77.80s, 77.30s, 77.60s for rotations back down. If they start trading above the 78.50s, I think they're back on the long side again. Just watching is to see how far they can take it at that point. So this is one of those things where you have to be nimble and pay attention. They're still not in office and they're not just changes yet. So this could be just anticipation type trades. So who knows what's going to go, but expect big moves to the downside when it comes to oil, big moves. And the question is how fast it happens and if it just happens on anticipation or if it's going to be something else happening. Now, if you had big enough accounts, you can take an oil trade and sit in it for the next month or so. That could be an interesting trade. Anyway, gold. So trade oil. Let me see. The bias on oil is range bound. The long side could still take charge if the support holds, but we are right here at that support area around the 77s. And it looks to me like they just took it out. If they can keep going on the downside below the 77s, stay on the short side. Otherwise, potential long trade could be setting up here for rotation back up again. So, and then oil and gold. Trade gold from the long side. They right now they backed off the 27.50s for a bit. Down here testing the 27.20s, looking for rotation back up to the 50s. So looking to trade range bound around that 27.50 here. Now, it could be that they're going to go back and forth between the 26.70s and the 2750s in these two high volume areas. I'm just thinking that they ran it all the way up here to this high volume area, so chances are they're going to stick around here, maybe even challenge this a little bit. So we'll see where they're going to go, but I think they are down here at the lower edges right now, 27 and 28. If they start taking out that low at the overnight low, I would start looking for a retracement trade back to the 2670s. And if not, so I'm going to be looking at buying against the 39s, 33s, and the 27s for rotations back up. And if they trade back up towards the 2750s, potential short against 48. Not going to be aggressive about that. I think the better short may be if they run up and test the 56. That would be a decent short setup. So long opportunities on the way up here, and be mindful 2750 is your attractor, so that they're likely to go sideways when they get back up there. All right, so that's oil and gold. And I think oil is going to be a very interesting market to watch in the next few weeks here as the policy changes and the market is trying to adjust to the new policies. Yeah, they say yeah, Mihail, but that's not the point. They don't give a shit about the oil going up as long as it's not under their administration, right? When it was a political liability for them, they cared, but now they don't give a 2 cents. So that's how cynical it is. That's how cynical it is. But anyway, back to the ES. So let's see what's going to go. Looks like we have a little bit of strength going on from the get-go. So maybe you'll get a rally out of this. We'll see. But watch ES. They're up against resistance. NASDAQ is starting off from a lower end of the range. So NASDAQ could be the one leading us higher today. So watch for that. Alrighty, guys. Good trading. I'll see you back at 11:30. So, and remember, it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. And remember the Martin Luther King's Day on Monday. So Monday I'm not going to open a room, but I'll touch on that later as well. Alrighty, guys. Later.